Fellow auto detailers, welcome to the show that features interviews with today's most successful auto detailers. This is the Auto Detailing Podcast. Here's your host, Jimbo Balaam.
Hey guys, before we get started today, I want to talk to you about something that I've implemented into my auto detailing business personally that has seriously taken it to the next level. And that's B Pro by the Better Software Company. B Pro is the #1 all-inclusive small business management solution that was designed specifically for detailers. You see, customer revenue is the lifeblood of any small business. And we've talked about this right on the show. And that's why I chose B Pro in my personal business, and that's why B Pro comes with a variety of features that are completely customizable to help boost your business. Here are some of the things that it includes. Email marketing. Have you been wanting to do that? Have you been wanting to step up your lead generation? How about your opportunity management? What is opportunity management? You know all those quotes that you throw out that you never hear back from those people? What if you actually started following up on the quotes that you gave? That would be huge. B Pro will even remind you when a customer's likely ready to buy from you again. So not only are you following up on the leads or on the quotes that you're giving out, but you're also following up on the customers that have already bought from you. That is huge. We're leaving a ton of money on the table by not following up with our previous clients. B Pro has everything you need to run your auto detailing business in one easy to use solution. Customer management, invoicing, inventory, orders, scheduling, timesheets. B Pro has you covered whether you run a single man mobile detailing business or a multi-location, multi-employee fixed location, or even fixed and mobile locations. B Pro can support you too. Only B Pro offers the same functionality on your smartphone as on your laptop, and they even have where your employees can log in and have their own interface too. So if you have multiple employees, you want tracking on your employees to be able to tell what time they got to a location, what time they left the location. You want customers to sign when the service is done. You want vehicle checklist. All these things are customizable within the B Pro software. So get started today at thebettersoftwarecompany.com. That's thebettersoftwarecompany.com. And tell them you heard about them from Jimbo on the Auto Detailing Podcast for some special love.
How long do you want to talk for? Because I can tend to talk too much.
We'll probably keep it to, I try and go like 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Okay,
so.
Cool. Perfect.
All right, here we go.
Right.
Welcome to episode 247 of the Auto Detailing Podcast. I'm excited to have the former president of Griots Garage and the current president of the Cars Yeah podcast, Mark Greene. Mark, how's it going?
Hey, Jimbo, going great. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking the time. And we already spoke for 11 minutes about stuff. And I mentioned this before on the show. I always have like really good conversation and before I start recording, and I'm like, dang it, I'm not gonna do that. But I feel like we're gonna get into some really good stuff. So,
I'm sure we will. And you were a guest on my show, so we're already buddies, and we're both detailed fanatics. So hey,
exactly,
just two car guys here chatting away.
That's it. And I want to get into your podcast and talk about that too. But before we do, how did you get into cars, and where did that all start?
Well, it started with my dad when I was quite young, 4 or 5 years old. He bought an MGTC, 1948 MGTC. And while I was only 4 or 5, kind of hard to remember that far back, but I do remember that car because of the huge grill when I, standing there looking up at that beautiful grill, and the way the doors were cut down. It was a right-hand drive car. I sit in the left side of the car, and he had a spare steering wheel that he would give me. And we pull up next to people, and they look down at where the driver was supposed to be, and this little 5-year-old kid was sitting there with a steering wheel, twisting it. They'd have a look on their face. I'd laugh, and they'd laugh, and it was fun. So that really started it, but I think it's in my DNA. I've been a car guy forever. My dad would take me up to the Orange County drag races. Now, this was back in the 60s. I grew up in La Jolla, California, so Southern California, car culture. we'd go up there to Orange County Raceway, watch the dragsters run when there was no Irvine, didn't exist, 405 didn't exist.
Wow.
Yeah, way back when there was Lion Country Safari to the left up on the hill where we would take our car. And one time driving through there, a baboon jumped on our Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser and ripped the windshield wipers right off the car.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I think that's where it started. Yeah, it was, back then I just always loved cars. I made all the little model cars that you'd ever know. And sitting in my room, I'd buy 3 kits and build 1 car out of 3 and do custom stuff. And I've always been a car guy.
That's awesome. I'm slowly, for me personally, it's been like almost like an evolution into my appreciation for cars and specifically clean cars. But I'm coming to the realization that it is something that's in your DNA from an early age.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned clean cars. I have a feeling we're going to talk a little bit about detailing and my detailing background too. So
maybe just a little, if we could get there. But what was your first job around cars?
Oh gosh, I was 14 years old. My next door neighbor, Mr. Alan Swanser, was an FBI agent, and he bought the first 450 SL Mercedes in town from Heinz Geetz Mercedes, which interestingly enough, I've had his grandson as a guest on my show. He runs a performance parts product in San Diego, California, but that's a side note. At any rate, I went over there, I looked at this beautiful new Mercedes, and I always took care of my parents' cars. We had Oldsmobile Vista Cruisers and different kind of funky cars that typically you have when, you're a kid and your parents need to throw you in the back seat. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Swanser, could I wash your car?" And he said, "Sure." And he actually let me back. I was 14. He let me back it out of his garage, pull it in front of my house, and I spent all day. I didn't only just wash it, I detailed it. I waxed it, polished it, did the interior. I brought it back, and he walked out, and he said, "My gosh, this looks better than when I bought it." And I said, "Well, thanks." And I started to walk home, and he said, "Well, wait a minute. How much do I owe you?" And I said, "You're going to pay me?" And he said, "Well, I didn't expect you to wash my car for free." And so he gave me $25. Now,
you were
that
rich.
That was a huge amount of money back then. I came home just with a smile on my face, and my dad said, "You had a good time doing that, didn't you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why don't you start your own business?" And the light bulb comes on, and so he helped me draft up a flyer, and I called my business Auto Care, all one word. He drew a picture of a Porsche Turbo because I always loved Porsches, and I had a paper route. So I put he went to work, mimeographed. Those young viewers will have no idea what that means, but let's say he made copies of that flyer, and they kind of smell.
I was lost for a second.
Yeah, I know you're young, I'm an old guy, but that's okay. He made copies, those Xerox machines, and I put them in all my papers, and the phone started ringing, and a business was born. And I detailed cars from the time I was 14 until I was 27 when I got married. It paid for my college education. It paid for all my surfboards because I was a surfer back then. I'll tell you a funny side note. A lot of my friends in school thought I was a drug dealer because they said I always had cash in my pocket, which was rare for a junior high kid and a high school kid, even in La Jolla. But I had my own business, and it taught me things that I could have never learned anywhere else. Customer service, being responsible. I learned how to use different products. Now, back then, the products were far from what they are today. So everything was done by hand. I had to coordinate things. I had to plan things. It was awesome. I tell people today, man, if your kid likes cars, let him set up his own car care business because it's the only way to go. Of course, I'm talking the preaching to the choir here, as they say, because of what you do for a living. But it was awesome. And that was 14 years old. And yeah, waxed a lot of cars. I wish I kept track of them all.
Yeah, that'd be cool. First of all, you have an impeccable memory for how you just rattle off those memories of your life. But and then the second thing I wanted to say is it's funny that you said that your classmates thought you were a drug dealer because you always had cash. It reminded me of just a few nights ago, we went out to dinner, my wife and I, with her brother and his wife, and we were the only, and a couple other people, and we were the only ones that paid with cash. And she was like, "Wait, my sister-in-law was like, "Wait, you guys pay with cash? Like,
Yeah,
that's
what's
so
that?
weird." And then I had another thought, but I know what it was. It's so interesting to me how detailing, once someone gets into detailing, how it's like woven into their life, and it's always something that they usually, if they try to get out of it or get out of it, always end up coming back to. And it's so fascinating to me that detailing offers that to people.
Well, here's the cool thing. My dad grew up in Texas on a farm, and he always told me, look, it's okay to have a career, get a job in something that you use your brain. He was an architect, so he left the farm and became an architect, but he said, always have a craft that you can fall back on to create an income for yourself. And I think car care, car detailing is exactly that. If things go awry and you need to go back to your roots and you need to make some money to feed your family or feed your face, there's always cars that need to be cleaned. And if you just have some patience and understanding and you're willing to work hard, you can always find work in that area, I believe, because a lot of people don't like to wash their cars, but they like to have clean cars. Yeah.
I agree.
Exactly.
So what happened at 27 then? Where did you, after detailing, what did you move on to?
Yeah, well, I went to school and studied, I double majored in business administration and graphic design. I love being creative. So I got a job out of college a little before 27. I didn't graduate at 27. I got out when most people get out, but I was still detailing cars to help save money so my wife and I could buy a house. I got a job at a graphic design and advertising firm. And I was there, ended up being there for 11 years. I became equity owner. I became an account executive bringing work in. I was the creative director of the firm. It was in San Diego. And we did all sorts of type of work for different people. But I landed this one account. I came home one day and this catalog was in the mail, Griots Garage. Now, a lot of people, I heard you call it Griots. The T is silent. It's a French word. But I got the first one they ever mailed because I was on a member of the Porsche Club, and Richard Griot had found a mailing list from the Porsche Club, and my name appeared. And my wife said, "Hey, there's this cool catalog with cool car stuff. I think you would like this." And I went, "I've never heard of this company." And I flipped it over, and it's in Vista, California. That's like 20 minutes up the road. We were living in Del Mar at the time.
Wow.
And so, long story short, I called on him multiple times. He would just almost hang up and say, "Sorry, we've already got somebody to buy." And finally, I convinced him to let me come up and pitch him. And the way I did it, this is a little tip for those salespeople out there. I said, "Look, I'm not going to come up and pitch having you as an account. I want to come up and buy about $200 worth of stuff from you." Well, he's never going to say no to that, right?
Exactly.
So
people
I draw
that
yeah.
When you put skin in the game in the form of money, people tend to listen a little bit more.
Yeah, give something back. So I drove up there, and turns out what looked like a real big company was a startup. There was just about 3 people there and one kid that would stop by on the way home from school and pack orders. We immediately hit it off because we're both car guys. I was driving a 84 Porsche Cabriolet at the time, Southern California, tops always down. Came out, we started talking, and long story short, I landed the account. We started designing and producing his catalog for him. That meant design, production, photography, copywriting, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually he asked me if I would like to come on board. I said, yeah, if I could have an equity share in the business, and that occurred. And then he sprung a little trick on me and said, "Look, we're going to move from Southern California to the state of Washington."
Uh-oh.
And I said, "What? Why would you want to do that?"
Right.
And he said, "Oh, California's not very tax friendly, and we need a place to go where we could hire people for less money, and we want to start producing our own car care products, and my family lives up there now, and that's where I want to go." So you take a long, hard breath, and you go, "Okay, is that what we want to do?" And that's what we did. My wife quit her career as an engineer. We had a 4-month-old boy, Blake, who just graduated from college, and a 4-year-old daughter who's 28 years old, Paige, and we moved up here to where it rains every stinking day.
No kidding.
Oh my gosh, it took me like 7 years to get used to the weather up here, but looking back, I'm glad I did it. It was a great opportunity, and this is a great place to raise my children, and in the summertime, the sun does come out. It doesn't really rain every day, so.
What was one of your favorite things about working for a car care brand?
Well, originally Griots Garage was not a car care brand. We had 4 brand products that we produced. But most of it was things for the garage. We sold tools, floor coverings, floor mats, floor covers, all sorts of things for the garage. That's why it was called Griots Garage, not Griots Car Care. That term came much later. But as far as my favorite thing, there were so many. I got to wear a lot of hats, and I tease everybody and say that's the reason I have no hair left on my head. When you're in a small start, I wore so many hats it rubbed all the hair off.
That's funny. That's
when
great.
you're in a small company, a startup company, you do everything. And my job when I came on board was marketing, merchandising, and building a high-end brand. That was the focus. And so that's what I set off to do. I was the president of the company. But I did everything. I would take orders during the day while I was trying to do my job. I'd go back and pack boxes at the end of the night. Thursdays, I'd go out and start mixing chemicals and trying to figure out how to make waxes work better and liquids and cleaners and polishes and things like that. And so we kind of just grew the business organically, very slowly from the beginning. But the fun part is, and this is the key, it's a key to my podcast, Cars Yeah, and the key to what everybody's life should be is do something you're passionate about that you want to be around. I loved being around cars. I loved being around garage products, things you worked on cars with. And I love building things. I liked creating a company out of nothing, creating things out of nothing. I got to travel the world looking for unique products to brand and buy. I was on the road a lot. Flying on airplanes back then was mostly Europe we would buy products from. And then, of course, there was a big shift to Asia where everything migrated that way. But still, just working in the culture, that's what was so much fun.
Mm. So Griot, geez,
Yes.
It was always meant to be a higher end brand from the very start. Okay.
From the very start, that was the goal. Yeah, is to build a company that had a very high profile brand of products being very high quality. The car care end of it started to grow because we realized, look, that's a consumable commodity. Once somebody buys a screwdriver, they're never going to buy another one from you because even if they break it, they'll send it back and want a new one.
Right.
Why'd you use that screwdriver as a pry bar? I don't know. But car care is like selling Snapple or Twinkies or anything else. People consume it. It rarely ever gets returned because the price point's low enough that if people don't like it, they just throw it away. It's a product that makes people happy because they go out, they use it, they stand back, they feel proud of what they did. Their car looks really awesome. And if you do it carefully, you can build a very nice company and brand around loyalty if the products are good quality, of course. And we all know there's bad car care out there that just doesn't do what it's promised. That doesn't work. That wasn't what we were about. We wanted to be a very high-end brand for the elite consumer.
So for a detailer, this is maybe a far stretch, but maybe not. So for a detailer, because I get a lot of guys that write in and say, I want to be a high-end detailer. Could you give them any tips on either how to position themselves as let's just say a brand? A brand is a brand. So
sure.
Maybe a couple tips or tricks that you guys use to position yourselves as a high-end car care company or just a higher end company in general.
Absolutely.
That detailers could take away.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's what you have to do. Number one, you have to learn your craft so that you're the best you can be. You have to really learn how to use your products, find out what the best products are, and get very skilled at your craft so that when somebody brings you a high-end car, they will trust you with that car. So you got to get good at what you're doing, number one, and find the right products that work depending on the surface issue you're dealing with. Number two, focus on only acquiring those kinds of customers. Here's a good example is if you are a detailer and you're willing to accept anybody, and even those people who would say, well, I don't want to pay $75 for a detail, I only want to pay $50, and you say, okay, because you're thinking I have nothing else to do today, you're really diminishing your brand. I think the key is you've got to focus on those high-end people, and you have to learn to say no to the people that aren't going to carry what you're trying to build forward in your brand. That is the people who are trying to lowball you or the cars that you really don't want to work on. I'll tell you an example. By the time I got to college, I had so many customers for my detailing business that I decided, you know what? I only like European cars. That's all I'm going to detail. And so I just started declining cars that I didn't think were going to be fun because I had enough business. Now that took time, but it's doable if you focus on high end, because what'll happen is those high end consumers, those high end customers with nice cars, they know other people with nice cars and they will spread the word. And that's another little trick I think for detailers is I had these little business cards I created and I would always ask them, could you please refer me to at least one of your friends? If you say refer me, it's so general that they'll go, yeah, fine. But if you say one of your friends that has a very nice car that he or she cares about, that's a lot more likely to get a referral. So I think the key there is know your craft and focus on the kind of business you want to go after. And don't worry about the rest because there's plenty of other detailers that'll pick up the bottom feeders out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's so hard, and I've had multiple conversations about this. It's so hard when bills are due and there's money being thrown at you, but it seems like time and time again, that's when you get yourself in the worst situations, is when you're desperate for the money and you start picking up work that you don't want.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I'll never forget a lady that called me as a friend of mine from school. Mom said, I'd love to have you detail my car. And I said, what kind of car is it? And she said, a Buick. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't do Buicks. And she started laughing. And she goes, well, that's ridiculous. And I said, no, I only work on cars that I really like. No offense. Your Buick's probably very nice. But if you have a Mercedes or a Porsche or a Ferrari, I'd be happy to detail that. And she got a little perturbed and hung up. And yeah, it was kind of hard to say no. But you know what? If you look at any strong brand out there, that's what they do. Pick any brand, Polo, Ralph Lauren. Now, maybe it's different today, but in the old days, they were the most expensive polo shirts you could buy. And yeah, you could buy cheaper ones if you really wanted to, but everyone wanted the pony on his chest. And if you wore that, you felt good about it. So you really have to decide, who's my avatar? And I always tell people, when I say avatar, who's your customer? Write down specifically who that person is, what that person's name is, what their age is, what kind of car they drive, what kind of income they have. Explain to yourself in a written description, who's my avatar, who's my customer, and only focus on those people. It's hard, but if you keep doing it, that's who you will become.
That's a great advice. I actually recently thought about kind of doing the same thing you were talking about with only working on European cars, but I was going to I was going to stop doing cars that were older than 3 years old. Mm-hmm. So, but I never got the courage to actually.
Well, here's the other thing is, I know plenty of high-end detailers, and I just came back from Car Week in Monterey here, and these guys only do old cars, but they do super, super high-end stuff. So they'll take a Ferrari and spend a week on it and charge tens of thousands of dollars, and then that car will be shipped back to that owner. But that's all they do. But they do even more than detailing. They might take parts off and refinish them somehow, right, polish and so forth. But that's their niche. And I remember when I met these guys, originally I think, you really have a company, you have enough work? And they just go, yeah, I've got more work than I can do. Wow. But now that didn't happen overnight. This was years of building up those client relationships, right, and the trust with those people. And you and I know people that have high-end cars, they're very, very picky about their vehicles, and they don't want just anybody working on them. So you have to build that trust. You have to have the right insurance, of course. So if you damage the car, you can get it fixed. But it's a slow building process, but it starts with defining your business, writing down who that avatar is, who you're going to go after, and only focus on them.
That's phenomenal advice. So then you move on from that and start this podcast. Why start a podcast? And obviously it has to do with cars.
Yeah.
But why start a podcast?
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I was with Griots technically almost 25 years.
Wow.
I was a part of the business for about 20 years, and the reason I say that is because I was working with Griots Garage for years before I actually became a part of it. And as it with any business, things change, situations change. And I felt, it's time for me to go do something different. I helped two people build their businesses. The first company I was in for 11 years out of college, and then this company. I wanted to go do something on my own. Coincidentally, a couple pretty tragic things happened in my life at the same time. My father, who was 80, fell and broke his neck. Almost died. My mother-in-law got cancer, and so my wife and I went down to help them try to recover. I'm happy to say they both did recover, but it was a very, very trying time. And then when we came home, my wife, we found out, had a very serious tumor in her leg and required major surgery and about 8 months of recovery time where she couldn't walk.
Oh my
and
gosh.
so, yeah, it was a bad year, a very, very bad year. It was one of those years you look to the heavens and say, what are you doing to me? Why are you picking on me? Is this a test of some kind?
No kidding.
So my son was in college at the time. To add pain and misery, okay, I don't have a job. My wife has major medical bills. We just got back from, helping parents recover. That was expensive. And I've got a kid in a private college on the East Coast with tuition bills to pay. And so my son came home from college, and we were walking, and a lot of this is explained in my 300th episode at Cars Yeah, where I actually had my son Blake interview me because so many people asked the question, why podcasting?
That's amazing.
So to make a long story short, usually the son looks at the father and says, what should I do with my life, Dad? And instead, I was looking at my son saying, what should I do with my life, son? And he looked at me and he said, Dad, since I was about 5 years old, you've taken me to Concours events. He's been to Pebble Beach since he was 8 years old every year. He used to go with me to the racetrack because I raced vintage cars for 12 years. He was part of my pit crew. He's been to so many events. I used to take him to trade shows with me, SEMA, shows in New York and Europe when I would go to look for product. And he said, Dad, one thing that I always tease you about, you can't walk by somebody without stopping and asking them about their business or their car. And I said, yeah. He said, what if you created a podcast about that? And my question was, what's a podcast? I'd never heard of one. Now, this was 3 years ago or so, so I'd never heard of a podcast. And so he said, well, I listen to podcasts all the time when I'm at college. There's some really good ones. So he gave me a few to listen to. And the brain started twisting. And I went, wow, I could actually do this. I could figure out how to record shows. I could create my own website. I'm a designer. So if you go to the Cars Yeah website, I did everything there. All the photography is mine. All the copywriting is mine. I do a weekly blog that I send out that's mine because that comes from my marketing background, my creative background. So I got to work and just figured it all out. And the amazing thing to me was not how easy it was, because it was not easy. It was a huge amount of work. But you can go on YouTube and learn about everything. You can learn how to extract a tooth.
No kidding.
Yeah. You can learn how to detail cars. You can learn how to build a website. You can learn how to record in Adobe Audition. You can learn how to code, which I learned how to do on my website, how to write code to make the letter red instead of blue or the picture long instead of wide. And so I created that whole thing. I created an avatar for Cars Yeah, which is what I suggested for anybody building a business. And Cars Yeah was born. And I'll tell you, your listeners, a funny story. I set a date of May 28th in 2014 to start Cars Yeah. That was my drop dead, I have to have everything done date. It took me about 4 months from start to finish to have everything ready to go. And a week before I was supposed to go live, I had 0 guests on my show. I hadn't found anybody because you'd call people and they'd go, who are you? Or what's a podcast? Or what's Cars Yeah? Or,
Sounds like me talking.
Yeah,
trying to find people. They're like, who are you? What's a podcast?
Yeah. It's getting better. It's getting better. People are, it's really, people are learning what it is. But I got a call about 5 days before my go live, and it was from a PR gal. And she said, hey, I found your website, because I had done a soft launch with my website, but with no guests. I just kind of, put it out there. That's another tip. You just got to go out there and do it. And she said, hey, I have a client that would like to be your first guest. And it was Rick Cole. Rick Cole Auctions. Very well known. The first guy to bring auctions to Pebble Beach Car Week. And I went, wow, cool. And so that was it. You just start And ever since then, I'm proud to say I've not missed one show. I do 5 shows a week. I'm closing in on 600 guests in a little over 2 years. But you know, Jimbo, you do a podcast. This is a lot of work. It's a full-time job, not only to feed the machine, but to try to make money at it. So, that's how it all started. And I tell you something, I get to talk to people from all over the world that have figured out how to wrap their passion for cars into their vocations, their careers, and their lives. And it is absolutely amazing. I went to Car Week last week, and I saw probably 100 people that had been on my show that I'd never met before except over the phone. They came up, gave me a hug, we shook hands, we talked. And these are people from all over the world, all walks of life, beginning business people to very, very substantially wealthy, successful business people. It's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, and I am impressed at the sustainability that you've been able to achieve with your podcast. I mean, to find 5. When I very first started, I was doing 5 episodes a week, but only 1 was with someone. And the 4 others were just like little tips that I had.
Right.
So to do 5 people every single week is just...
It's a machine that has to be fed. Yeah, and on top of that, I do a weekly blog every Tuesday, so I have to do a blog every Tuesday. I do an email recap every Friday to my mailing list, because for every person listening out there, no matter what your business, you've got to build up a clientele of followers.
Right.
That's where the value is. So I do a lot of social stuff. I have 2 Facebook pages, which I invite all your listeners to join if they'd like. Mark Greene, and then Cars Yeah. I have Instagram, which is Cars Yeah. Twitter, which is @Cars Yeah Podcast. A YouTube page. I'm playing with Snapchat now. I just started doing some Snapchat and some Instagram stories while I was down in Monterey, which were very well received. So you combine the 5 shows a week with, and then all this social media. It is it's a monster. But again, I was used to, Griots, I work 6-7 days a week, 10, 12-hour days. I'm used to working hard. You are an entrepreneur. A lot of your listeners are entrepreneurs. That's just what's in our blood. So you just figure out how to do it. You see what works. You try things. You test things. You just do it.
And like you said, at least it's all surrounded in something that you're really passionate about in and of itself, being cars. So, excuse me, at least you still get to be around that whole culture still, and like you go to Monterey and you're kind of working, but not really. You're networking,
Right.
But it's something that you love and something that you would probably go to regardless if you had a podcast or not.
Well, this was my 28th year attending Monterey Week. So,
wow.
I do it a lot. SEMA, this will be my 27th year going to SEMA this fall. That's another great place to find potential sponsors, find potential guests. The other cool thing is I align myself with a lot of Concours events. I become a sponsor of those events. That helps me relate. I get invited all the time. I've got people that invited me to visit their facilities, their factories all over the world. So it kind of snowballs a little bit, and it's all about that networking and staying in touch with people. That's where the social media is kind of good for that.
Right.
Because you can kind of see what's going on in people's lives and kind of expose what you want to expose of your own life.
Exactly.
And again, you're a young guy. I'm 58 years old. So a lot of this stuff was really new to me. I had to really embrace it because it was kind of challenging. I didn't quite understand, Instagram, what is that for? Why does anybody do that?
Right.
And you just go out and learn, and then you just jump in and get involved. And I'll tell you, the people that I've been able to meet through these, another one I didn't mention, but I really should, is LinkedIn, which has really proved to be a phenomenal place to find business relationships.
Really?
I now post all my shows on LinkedIn, as well as refer them on my social feeds, and of course the Cars Yeah website where you can listen to them. But LinkedIn has proven to be a substantially successful way for me to come across and meet people. And now I'm getting a flood of people from LinkedIn who want to connect with me and then are starting to say, hey, can I be on your show? Yeah, LinkedIn is, I think, become a very nice professional platform. I wish they'd change some things. So there's some things about it I don't really like. They're not very intuitive and not very user friendly, at least from my perspective. But it's a phenomenal source. So that's another tip I would give your professionals out there. Use LinkedIn because, again, professionals are using LinkedIn, and those are the guys that own businesses, that own cars, that need to be detailed.
Do you use just the free version of LinkedIn, or are you having? Wow,
no,
okay.
I use the free version. I'm kind of a cheap Charlie right now.
No. I'm wondering for the strategy portion of it. Are you so? Because I have a LinkedIn profile that I honestly never, ever go on.
Okay.
I just get the emails all the time, so I just wondered.
No, you need to start using it, and here's why. LinkedIn is a professional network. It's not the social craziness that Facebook is. And the challenge I have with Facebook is it's fine, it's fun. I meet a lot of people that way. But then you get all the junk on Facebook and then all the political stuff that right now is just nauseating.
Makes you want to unfriend a bunch of people?
Yeah.
Regardless of how they...
Yeah, which way they lean. And I'll give another tip. This, to me, seems very obvious, but I see especially young people making this mistake. Stay out of politics, stay out of religion when you're doing social stuff. I don't care, how strongly you feel, you will lose half your customers if you're too aggressive with that stuff.
Yep.
Because you'll just turn people off. They may still like you, but they'll go, oh, you're going to vote for S&S or Y and Y? I don't like you anymore. And they won't do business with you. So stay away. It's very hard. But LinkedIn, that's my tip for you, Jimbo. Start using it because that's where the professionals are. And if you want to focus on just high end, those are the kind of people you want to nail down and laser focus in. And the great thing about that is as you build the LinkedIn presence, you'll start to attract professionals. So that's why, and I haven't been doing this until recently, is I post every one of my shows there. And I always get comments. I always get people coming back to me. I post all my blogs there, and I'm going to start doing some other creative things on LinkedIn as well that relate to procuring sponsors for my show.
Interesting. I'm definitely going to have to check it out.
Yeah, step up there because I really believe that is where the real money is, and that's where the real serious people are.
Yeah.
And you never know. Also, you talked earlier about having something to fall back on. You start to build your LinkedIn connections. If you have to go find a job someday or you have to go do something different, you choose to go do something different, you now have a network of professionals, not just Facebook funnies, but professionals that you can go to and say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. I want to go work for this kind of company. And now I've got 20 people that I'm connected to that have those kinds of businesses. They own them. They work in them. And as you know, and I've told my young kids this, it really is who you know, not what you know.
That is becoming more true every single day.
It's absolutely
unbelievable.
True.
Because when I would, probably, 10, 12 years ago, there was that huge rush to get to college and get a degree. And then I'm starting to see people that I went to school with come out of college with a degree and be like, oh, I can't get a job.
Well, we could have a whole, we could do a whole show on that.
Agreed. But it's so funny that, man, if you really work at who you know in your network and wiggle in with certain people, you can go extremely far.
I have seen people that I've met working in companies and I scratch my head and go, how did they get this job?
Yep.
I mean, they just seem so inept at what they're doing.
I know, yeah.
And it's because they knew somebody who knew somebody or they knew somebody that knew somebody else. And it's so important. And I think it's a challenge for young people, especially to know how to communicate properly and stay connected in a way that is legitimate. But again, if you want to have me back someday, we could have a whole discussion on that and my feelings on that, because one of my other many jobs at Griots was hiring everybody. I mean, all those people I hired over the years, many people I had to let go. And you scratch your head sometimes and just the way people behave and what they do. And even the simple interview process of things that aren't discussed in interviews that they'd walk out and go, why wouldn't they ask me those questions? I don't get it.
Right.
So, yeah, very interesting stuff. But LinkedIn, I encourage you to go there and use it. It's free. You can do the paid one, which is even better, but it's just like Facebook. Use it. It's a way to market yourself to people. And even for writing, start your own blog. It doesn't have to be extensive. You don't have to write a lot. My rule with my blog is somebody has to be able to read it in 1 minute or less.
Okay.
Because I get tons of blogs, and a lot of them, they're so long, I don't have the time.
Right.
So, if you're a detailer out there listening to the show, start a little detailing blog. You can create a one-page site for yourself, virtually free.
Yep.
Post it up there and just write something about it. No matter what it is, just start putting content out there in different ways, because you never know how those touch points will come back and help you.
I love it. Man, Mark, you've made my job so easy today. Unbelievably easy. It's like you've done this before or something.
Yeah, once or twice. Maybe just once or twice. And it's fun because I've had people come to me knowing where my background was and say, hey, can I pay you to consult with me to help me with product development or business outline? And I've been able to do some consulting with some very high-end names. I'll keep them confidential, but if I said them, every listener out there would know who they were, because of the way I reach out to people and the way I communicate with people and just putting it out there. And anybody can do it. It's a lot of work, but you just have to be consistent and you have to keep feeding it. And that's the key. You can't stop feeding it, because once you do, people will forget about you, because this day and age, we're obliterated with information every day. It's just overwhelming.
It is.
And that's why when you see, we didn't talk about this, but advertising, even if you can't afford to advertise, you can still do it through social media. There's a way to do it. There's a way to do it without coming across too strong. And I've even seen on my social media feeds, because I've got thousands of friends now on Facebook. I have no idea who they are, but they're my friends. People that have just said, hey, I want to, friend you, that make comments about, I had this, and these are detailers I'm talking about, because we're on a detail show here.
Right.
I had this client today, and oh man, they're such pigs. Their car is such a mess. And I just go, gosh, stop. Don't say anything bad.
I know. I try and warn them too. I'm like, oh, what if your customer saw that?
No, and even back when I was at Griots Garage, we would have customers return things that were obviously misused. It would drive a lot of people in the business a little crazy, me too. But at the same time, okay, they're a customer. They're abiding by our rules. We had a very liberal return policy, and you still treat them with respect. It's good to find out why they didn't like it.
Right.
Maybe they did use the screwdriver as a crowbar, and that's why they didn't like it. But you gently remind them that, we do sell crowbars, so maybe you should buy a crowbar, not a screwdriver. It's a leverage point. But it's really, you've just got to be professional these days everywhere you are, because people are looking at you. Don't have pictures on your Facebook page of a beer in your hand, because nobody's going to let you detail their Ferrari if they think you drink.
Right.
They're just not going to do it.
Right.
So.
and you've already mentioned how people can find you, but just in case they didn't catch that or they're just popping in, I know you're on everything, but that's kind of vague. So tell us how people can find you and find the show.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to offer what I call my Filler Up book. It's a free ebook that I've created. If you go to carsyeah.com and click on the free book button, I'll send you via email my free Filler Up book. I take a lot of photographs. And the photograph, I think my photo library is now nearing 100,000 images.
Wow.
So I designed a little ebook that's called Filler Up. It's all really cool fuel filler caps from all sorts of unique cars and things. The book is laced with some very inspirational quotes from very famous car people. You can click, that'll subscribe you to my weekly blog and my weekly email, which is a recap of all my shows, and that's free to all your listeners out there. You can also find my website at www.carsyeah.com. The website has all the guests listed there, even broken down by category, nearing 600 people now, including the famous Jimbo Balam, who's a past guest on Cars Yeah. You can listen to his show there where we had a fun time talking about car care. You can also find me on Twitter at Cars Yeah Podcast, at Cars Yeah Podcast, Instagram, Cars Yeah, YouTube, Cars Yeah, Snapchat, Cars Yeah. It's a Cars Yeah world
So
over
just
here.
Google Cars Yeah, and everything will pop up, right?
Well, I hope so. That's the goal. And one thing I didn't mention, but I will, another thing that I think is good for every detailer out there to have is to create some kind of a mantra or a quote around their brand that identifies who they are. I did that at Griots with "Have fun in your garage." That was a quote that we drilled into our customer's head on everything. For me, with Cars Yeah, my quote, my mantra is inspiring automotive enthusiasts. And it has a double entendre. I'm hoping that I'm interviewing inspiring automotive enthusiasts like you, Jimbo. And in return, together, we are inspiring automotive enthusiasts to find a way to wrap their passion for cars into their lives. And I think that's what we've done today here on your show as well. So,
today's sponsor of the show is Bluehost. Bluehost offers domains and hosting. If you're looking at buying a domain name or hosting your current domain name, head on over to autodetailingpodcast.com/website. I've worked out a deal with Bluehost for special discounts and offers for Auto Detailing Podcast listeners, and it also helps me out too. Gives me a little bit of kickback for each one of you that sign up through that website, autodetailingpodcast.com/website, where you can get a free domain name with a hosting plan. So head on over to autodetailingpodcast.com/website and pick up that free domain with any hosting package. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Auto Detailing Podcast. Head on over to autodetailingpodcast.com for full show notes and links of everything that we've talked about today. And don't forget to check out our resources page for a direct link to all the products talked about not only on today's episode, but that I use in my day-to-day detail business. They have direct links so you can purchase and get free shipping right from that page. That's autodetailingpodcast.com. We'll see you on the next episode.